All right, so if anybody's just tuning in, just based off of the title, search results or whatever, this was supposed to be like part of a series where I'm talking about how to get started coding, and I've been doing a series where I called "Walk Around the Rivers of Life," which is my daily vlog series. It's not philosophical. We're literally walking around the Rivers of Life Church, which is right outside my house. So, but I recorded this was supposed to be the second part of the series. First part was we covered, let's see here, what do we do? What coding is, the type of people who code, and then next up we were going to get into the nuts and bolts of it. What should you learn, like right off the get-go, what to expect. So I did that this morning, but it was an hour long. I'm sorry, guys. I could. Well, you should be thanking me. No, you should thank me. I didn't subject you to an hour long. An hour long diatribe on the answer to the question of what programming language you should learn first. It's JavaScript, guys. So all of the people who just want the answers, there you go. A minute and 30 seconds in. Have fun. So, okay. So I will now elaborate. And if you want to stick around, I'll show you why I have such a strong opinion. All right, so I have notes in front of me. We're going to try to do this in 10 minutes. And this means I'm going to have to cut things short, Mr. Internet Trolls. We can't go into complexities here, so yeah. So the most common advice you're going to get on this topic of what programming language you should learn, the most common advice is that it doesn't matter, which is absolutely 100% incorrect. It does matter immediately. If you learn some esoteric language, let's say you learn Fortran. That's a programming language. Let's say you decide, hey, I'm going to learn Fortran, and you learn how to program in Fortran. Well, there's pretty much no market for Fortran, especially for junior developers. This practically you want to learn C. Well, there's pretty much no market for C programmers, junior programmers. It's practically non-existent. Whereas if you learn JavaScript, one of the most popular languages, probably the most popular, there's Java and JavaScript, which are like the kings of the industry, and there's C. C like underlines everything, but relatively few people actually interact with C on a daily basis. It's mostly JavaScript and Java. And the languages, despite the name, have no bearing upon each other. They have no relationship. They're completely different languages, and they don't even share a common ancestry. Only vague notions of similar syntax, and even then, not really. So, yeah. So choosing a language that is popular is going to make you far more marketable. The next thing that you got to do that you want from a language is you want to make sure that the first language you learn, because this is going to be the first language that, sure, later on you're going to learn like 20 different languages or whatever. Like I know probably a dozen different languages at varying levels of skill. I work with half a dozen on a regular basis. But you always have your one language that you're an expert in, at least one language that you're expert in. And you want to go deep into at least one language. That language should be your first language, because that's just the economical thing to do. You've got to get deep enough into a language to become enough of an expert for somebody to hire you to work on their projects, right? If you don't get that, so you got to go deep in expertise in at least one language. You might as well be in a language that is very, very popular. So you got to learn at least one. And also another thing, how nice is the language to use? Is it really difficult to get your programming environment set up? Is it really difficult to bring in other people's code into your project and use it? Is it really difficult to figure out when something's gone wrong? A lot of languages, especially older languages, do all of that stuff very, 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 very poorly, like C and C++ and even Java, and they have a much worse story when it comes to all of those things and numerous others. So ergonomics, languages that are easy to use, matter a lot, because you want to focus on getting productive with programming. You want to be building projects as quickly as possible, not tracking down obscure cryptic errors that make no sense unless you've been doing it for 20 years. So yeah, ergonomics matter, and the performance needs to be good enough. You don't want a language that's super slow. So in a lot of computer science departments, they teach Python. And a lot of experienced software developers like Python because it's like this little simple scripting language, and you can write up something really quickly and kind of glue stuff together really quickly, and throw out ideas and see what works. Python's great for that. What it's not great for is anything that's remotely performance related. Same thing with Ruby. Same thing with PHP or Perl. Almost every that's just called an interpreted language. All of these interpreted dynamic languages, they're typically slow. JavaScript is an interpreted dynamic language. The difference is it has billions of dollars put behind it trying to make it fast because it runs the web. It runs all 99.999% of the code that's running in your browser whenever you go to Google or Facebook or Trello or whatever. That's JavaScript, and they want it to be snappy. They want it to be fast, and so they spend a lot of engineering horsepower, a lot of very smart people trying to make it fast. So JavaScript performs more like the kind of next up category, which is the statically compiled VM languages like C# and Java, which you don't need to know what any of that stuff means, but it just means that you have your slow interpreted languages, Perl, PHP, Python, Ruby, and then you have JavaScript, which is like its own little niche, and then you have the static compiled Java, C#, and then you have your super fast native language like C, C++, and now like Rust maybe. But those are kind of like you go from very, very, very slow, like hundreds of times slower than this, hundreds or even thousands of times slower, depending on what language you choose. And so if you want to build applications that are going to scale pretty well, and most people are working with web applications or web adjacent applications, you need perf. It gives you, you want a language that has good enough performance, and JavaScript gives you that, while still being a dynamic language, which makes languages easier to use. And you can always tack on the static types later on with a thing called TypeScript, which is we're going to ignore for now. But that's an option, and I love it. But okay, so JS is the solution you should go for, because it is cross-platform. Pretty much any platform that you ever want to deploy to, you can do. You can do web in the browser. You can do web servers. you can do desktop, you can do games, you can do mobile applications. And not only, see, a lot of languages say, well, you can deploy cross-platform. We have all of these solutions for you. But they're really niche, partially maintained, half-assed solutions that barely work. With JavaScript, all of those platforms have multiple solutions. You have multiple ways to publish to mobile applications. You have multiple ways to do desktop applications, multiple ways to do web servers, and all of them well-maintained, well-established solutions. So you're not treading any new ground here, and that's what you don't want to be, treading new ground whenever you're first starting out. So cross-platform, there's really no other language that even really comes close as far as the cross-platform goes. It's also fairly modern languages. There's like languages, I would say, if I was to give a guess, there's kind of like languages that existed before package management and then languages that existed after package management. And it makes a huge difference in ergonomics and library quality. And libraries are code that you can bring into your project. Packages are code that you can bring in to your project that other people wrote that you can just use, that you can just consume to. So like, I don't know, you might have a library that lets you interact with Excel documents or Word documents, that kind of thing. Makes them, you get the idea? So it's a modern language. It has modern tooling. It's just the ergonomics of working with it. The error messages, everything is there. After you get into the industry, you get there is definitely a lot to be said for how ergonomic a language is to use on a daily basis. And JavaScript is one of the better. It's not the best. It's not even like particularly good, but it's not on the bad end. So you definitely don't want it. C++, Java, all terrible. Terrible to work with, package management, and blah, 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 blah. So we got like 3 more minutes. I'm trying to get this like definitely below. I'm trying to go for 15 minutes, if not 20 minutes. We're going to make it. Okay, so areas where, so the areas where JavaScript is weak are not areas where it really is a concern for a new developer. So there are a few places where JavaScript's not really good, and it's places where they're very resource constrained. You don't have very much CPU, very much RAM, or you need the most performance, or you need the least amount of memory. So things like just the highest performance games, new developers are not going to be working on that kind of stuff. Embedded processors, so like if you've got like a smart thermostat, like say you got a Nest, that's actually running some code and stuff, or you got a smart, I don't know, fire alarm or something like that. That's called embedded. They're called embedded development, embedded processors. You're not really going to be doing that with JavaScript. That's going to be like C or Rust or one of these native languages that don't have a whole bunch of overhead to them. And again, new developers not going to be working on that kind of stuff. So hopefully I've made my case, and in the next minute I'll tell you how to do it. if we can get this done. Okay, so freecodecamp.org is where you're going to go. We're going to do it, guys. We're on like take 4. We're going to make it. So freecodecamp.org is what if you just want to follow a guide that's pretty decent, has a great community. If you get stuck anywhere, there's somebody you could ask for help. But right there in the community, it's fantastic. I started out there whenever I switched over to learning JavaScript. I did the free code camp stuff. It's excellent. It's changed over years. I can't really say what it is nowadays because I haven't checked it, but I'm almost 99% sure it's fantastic. If you don't want to use another resource, I do recommend you use FreeCodeCamp. But if you don't, I guess the Cliff Notes version is you want to learn HTML. HTML puts text on the screen in the browser. It lets you make lists and stuff, and you can use the default styling in the website. But it lets you write documents that get shown in the browser. Is web page. And then if you want the web page to look okay, you need another thing called CSS. And that styles everything to make it look okay. That's your basic web technology, HTML and CSS. Now, those aren't really programming languages, those are markup. I guess you could call them just markup languages. JavaScript is the programming language, so that's next up. So you're going to learn JavaScript, and then you're probably going to want to learn a framework or a library for web development, and you're going to choose React. I'm not going to explain why. I'm going to just say it's super simple, and it's extremely popular, and so you should learn React. And then eventually you're going to want to write something on the server side, on the web server. So you're going to need Node.js for that. That's basically a JavaScript run. So there's a runtime in the browser that runs the JavaScript. Well, there's an analog that you can run on the server. It's a server runtime for JavaScript called Node. They can write JavaScript for servers. That's what Node means. So and you may want to write a web server that serves web pages or whatnot. And you're going to need a framework for that, just like you might need a framework for your UI like React. So for the framework on the back end, you're probably going to want to choose Next.js. That actually uses React. So you use React with Next. So you're stacking things that you learned. Or if you wanted to go something bare bones, which is extremely... Next is really, really, really common, bog standard. It's really innovative, but it's bog standard stuff. But if you wanted something that was even more well established, you would do Express, do an Express framework on the back end. And then eventually you're going to want to store some stuff to the database. You're going to need to learn another programming language, and that's called SQL. And every developer has to learn SQL. It's like you also going to need to learn regular expressions, but that's neither here nor there. But you need to learn SQL, and that's a language that's very particular. It does one thing, and that is it talks to databases. But the good thing is it talks to many. You learn it once, and for the most part, you can talk to any database using SQL. And you are going to want to learn somewhat about one particular database. And if you were going to pick one, I would choose Postgres, because it's like the batteries included, does everything in the kitchen sink right out of the box. And all of this that I just mentioned is all free, open source, bog standard tools. We're not going out on a limb on any of this stuff. And if you get through all of this stuff, you're going to be what's called a full stack developer. That means that you can work on the front end, which is the browser, making things look pretty and presenting buttons and flashing stuff on the UI, and also responding to web requests on the back end and writing things to the database. That's the back end. So front end is like the browser, and then back end is like the web server and talking to the database and responding to web requests and stuff like that. So front end, back end, if you combine them together, full stack. If you get through all of that stuff that I just mentioned, that you will be a full stack developer. If you go through the free code camp thing, they have a front end developer cert, and they have a back end developer cert. And when you get both of them, you're a full stack developer. So another thing I would caution you against, we're running out of time, is do not jump around. It's called I wrote a blog post like forever ago about it, but I call it the beginning developer wonderland. So you learn a little bit of JavaScript and you start getting frustrated or getting bored or whatever. So okay, well, I'm going to learn PHP, And then you go through do tutorials wherever you get bored with that, and say, oh, I'm going to learn Python, and you do that. And then, or say you're just sticking to JavaScript and say, I'm going to learn React. Okay, well, what's this Angular thing? You go learn Angular. And then, oh, what's this Vue? Let me go learn Vue. And you're never getting past that introductory phase. So avoid that at all costs. Keep you narrow focus. That's why I like the free code camp, because it gives you an outline of things that you can get through, and just keep going to it until you got a really good reason. Like, I don't know, you met another buddy and you're going to develop this really cool web application together. That'll be the only time that you're really moving off track. Or maybe you join an open source project and you're helping them out on the open source project. They're giving you guidance. The people you're working with on your projects are giving you guidance. But whenever you don't have those things, you come back to Free Code Camp and you continue your curriculum. And you can keep doing it. And I would say by the time you get about to your front end cert, or you get near your front end cert done, or after you get your front end cert done, start applying for jobs. And it's going to take a while. It's not going to be the journey that you're about to embark on is not anything that is. It's going to be a long road. People try to say it's easy. It's not. There's a reason why developers are paid big money. It's not rocket science, but it's dealing with a lot of frustration, but it's doable. You put in the work, and you can get a nice job working, learning all the time. If you like to learn, this is a job that's right up your alley. But it's going to take a long time to learn. You hear stories all the time about I learned to code in 30 days or 60 days, and the reason why those and I got a job after 30 days or 90 days. The reason why those jobs are why those stories are so passed around and everything is because they're exceptional. They are outside the norm. They're not typical. If it was typical, you wouldn't hear about it, because everybody, yeah, I've heard this story a billion times. It's not, the reason why the stories make the round is not because that's something that you should expect to happen. It's because it's an exceptional story, and you shouldn't be basing your expectations on exceptional events. I would say at a minimum, you're looking at 6 months if you're starting from zero. And I wouldn't be surprised if it goes 2 or 3 years, depending on how much time you got to put into it. But I was on the road. I was 4 or 5 years or so or something like that, but I wasn't working on it. I'm a lazy ass, so it took me forever. But you keep going, and the thing that I always had in my mind was eventually I keep working at it, and eventually my skills will be undeniable. Eventually somebody's going to pull the trigger, and eventually somebody did. And truth be told, by the time I got hired, it ended up very quickly being one of the more senior developers. So if I just really, for me, I think I just really got unlucky with the job hunt. I could have been hired years before, but that's just part of the road, right? And I don't say any of this to discourage you, Mike. That's, if anything, I'm saying that this is possible. That's what I'm saying. So don't get caught up on it. It's possible. You can do it. I believe in you. And my comment session, I would love to hear some stories about, hey, dude, I saw your video. That would make my day. They say, hey, I got a job. I was making $70,000 a year, and I was flipping burgers. I want to hear all about it, buddy. So So good luck to everybody who made it through this. We didn't make our time limit, so the video's over now. I'm just going to ramble now, so if you want to skip out. But we did quite make it. We made it under 25 minutes, though. And I think we got most of the stuff in before 15 minutes. But I need to learn editing. I need to learn the power of the jump cut. That's what I need. The thing is, I don't think I could do. Oh, it's been. I did look at videos for editing, and yeah, I think I'd rather pay somebody to do the editing. It seems like that would be a better use of my time. Not that it's hard. It's just it's so tedious. It's such a specialized thing, you know. I don't know if it's worth my time to learn. So yeah, I hope somebody found this useful, and if we will continue the walks around the rivers of life. It's such a great title. It's so corny. It's this big joke that only I get. Oh, okay. All right. All right. So I'll see you guys. I guess I'll see you guys in the morning. I gotta wrap this thing up and get it uploaded. And, yeah. So you guys have a good night.